I thought I'd found my soulmate in college. Until a DNA test revealed he'd been my brother all along. What I am about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about family, friendship, and the secrets people keep buried for decades. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. Growing up, I always felt like something was missing from my life. Not in a dramatic way, but like there was this empty space I couldn't quite identify. My parents, Linda and Robert, were loving but distant. They'd adopted me when I was just 6 months old, and while they never hid that fact, they also never really talked about it in detail. "Your birth mother was very young," my mom would say whenever I asked. "She wanted you to have opportunities she couldn't provide." That was pretty much all I ever got, and honestly I was okay with that for most of my childhood. The Hendersons were good people. My dad worked as an electrician, Mom was a nurse, and we lived in a comfortable suburban house in Ohio with a golden retriever named Max. But college changed everything for me. Not because I suddenly became obsessed with finding my birth parents, but because I met him, Jake Morrison. And from the very first moment I saw him in our freshman psychology class, something clicked that I'd never experienced before. It was unjust attraction, though God knows he was gorgeous with those piercing green eyes. And that easy smile that made everyone in the room feel like they were his best friend, it was deeper than that. It was like ... recognition, like my soul knew his soul, if that doesn't sound too cheesy. We just clicked in this incredible way that felt almost supernatural. Jake was from Michigan, about 3 hours from where I grew up. He'd been raised by his single mom, Patricia, after his dad died in a car accident when he was 2. Patricia had never remarried, dedicating her entire life to raising Jake and working as a secretary at a law firm to make ends meet. Jake talked about her with this incredible love and respect that made me fall for him even harder. We became inseparable almost immediately. I'm talking about that kind of friendship where you finish each other's sentences, where you can sit in comfortable silence for hours, where you laugh at the same weird things that nobody else finds funny. My roommate used to joke that we were freakishly compatible. We had the same taste in music, movies, food. We both hated horror films, but loved psychological thrillers. We both put ketchup on our scrambled eggs, which everyone else found disgusting. We both had this weird habit of organizing our books by color instead of alphabetically. But here's the thing that should have been a red flag. Looking back, we looked eerily similar. Same dark brown hair, same green eyes, same narrow nose, even the same little scar above our left eyebrow. Mine from falling off my bike. When I was 7, his from running into a coffee table when he was 5. People constantly asked if we were siblings, and we'd always laugh it off. "Yeah, we get that a lot," we'd say, rolling our eyes like it was the most ridiculous thing in the world. Our friends started calling us the twins. As a joke, even professors would sometimes do double takes when they saw us together. Jake's mom, Patricia, thought it was hilarious when she first met me during Parents' Weekend sophomore year. "Oh my goodness," she said, laughing. "You two could be related." She took dozens of pictures of us together, saying we looked like we could be in one of those separated at birth articles in magazines. By junior year, Jake and I were dating. The transition from best friends to boyfriend and girlfriend felt so natural, so inevitable, that it didn't even feel like a transition at all. It was like we'd been meant to be together from the beginning. We moved in together senior year, got a little apartment off campus with 2 rescue cats we named Bonnie and Clyde. Everyone said we were perfect together. Our friends would make jokes about how we were going to have the most beautiful babies, because we had such good genes. Jake's mom would hint about grandchildren every time we visited. Even my usually reserved parents seemed to warm up to Jake in a way they never had with any of my previous boyfriends. "He's good for you," my dad said one day, which was basically the equivalent of a 5-star review from him. "You seem complete with him," and I did feel complete. For the first time in my life, that empty space I'd always carried around seemed filled. Jake wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my confidant, my partner in every sense of the word. We talked about everything, our fears, our dreams, our weird childhood memories. He told me about missing his dad and wishing he could remember more about him. I told him about sometimes wondering about my birth parents, but being scared to hurt my adoptive parents' feelings by searching for them. We graduated together, got jobs in the same city, started building a life. We adopted a dog, a German Shepherd mix we named Scout. We talked about marriage, about buying a house, about starting a family. Everything felt perfect, like we were living in one of those romantic comedies where everything just works out. Looking back now, I realize how naive we were. How we missed all the signs that were right in front of us. How we joked about looking like siblings without ever really thinking about what that might mean. How we never questioned why we felt this instant, inexplicable connection that went beyond normal attraction or friendship. But back then, we just felt lucky. Lucky to have found each other. Lucky to have found what we thought was true love. We had no idea that our entire relationship was built on a secret that would eventually destroy everything we thought we knew about ourselves, our families, and each other. The first crack in our perfect world came during what should have been one of the happiest times of our lives. Jake had proposed on New Year's Eve right at midnight as fireworks exploded over the city skyline. It was everything I dreamed of: romantic, spontaneous, perfect. We were planning a fall wedding, looking at venues, tasting cakes, doing all those wonderfully mundane things that engaged couples do. But then my mom dropped a bombshell that changed everything. We were having lunch at our usual spot, this little cafe downtown where she and I met every other Saturday. I was showing her pictures of wedding dresses on my phone, babbling excitedly about flowers and centerpieces, when she suddenly got this weird look on her face. Not sad exactly, but ... troubled, like she was wrestling with something heavy. "Sarah, honey," she said, setting down her coffee cup with shaking hands. "I need to tell you something about your adoption." My heart immediately started racing. In all my 26 years, my parents had been remarkably tight-lipped about the details of my adoption. I knew the basics: young birth mother, closed adoption, sealed records. But that was it. And honestly, I'd been okay with that. I had parents who loved me a good life, and I'd never felt that desperate need to find my real family that you see in movies. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light even though something in her tone made my stomach clench. She looked around the cafe nervously, like she was afraid someone might overhear. "Your adoption, ... It wasn't exactly what we told you. Your birth mother wasn't some random teenager who couldn't care for you." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" "She was ... She was someone we knew. Someone your father worked with." My mom's voice was barely above a whisper now. "Patricia Morrison." "She was a secretary at the electrical company where your dad was doing a big contract job back in the late 90s. Patricia Morrison." Jake's mom's name was Patricia Morrison. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Mom, what are you saying?" "Patricia was young, maybe 22 or 23. And she'd had this relationship with a coworker who died in that awful car accident. She was pregnant and completely alone, no family support, barely making enough money to survive. And she found out she was having twins. Twins. The word hit me like a physical blow. Twins. My voice came out as a croak. My mom nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. She couldn't afford to keep both babies, so she made the heartbreaking decision to keep one and give the other up for adoption. Your father and I had been trying to have children for years, and Patricia knew us through work. She asked if we'd be interested in adopting one of her babies. The cafe around me seemed to fade away. Chatter of other customers became white noise. All I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, and my mom's voice continuing this impossible story. We agreed immediately, of course. We were so desperate for a child, and Patricia seemed like a wonderful girl in an impossible situation. We helped her with medical expenses throughout the pregnancy, and when you were born. She paused, wiping her eyes. When you were born, it was the happiest day of our lives. But also heartbreaking because we knew Patricia was keeping your twin brother. Twin brother. Jake. Jake was my twin brother. I think I stopped breathing for a minute. Everything about our relationship suddenly made horrifying sense. The instant connection, the uncanny similarities, the way everyone said we looked like siblings, because we weren't just siblings. We were twins. "Sarah, honey, are you okay? You look pale." My mom reached across the table, but I flinched away from her touch. "Jake," I whispered. "Jake Morrison. That's who you're talking about, isn't it?" The color drained from my mom's face. "How do you?" "God, oh no." "Sarah, how do you know that name?" "He's my..." I practically shouted, causing several people in the cafe to turn and stare. "Jake Morrison is my..." "We've been together for 4 years, We're getting married in October. My mom's face went white as paper. She gripped the edge of the table like she might faint. That's impossible. Patricia moved to Michigan right after the birth. She said she couldn't bear to stay in Ohio. Too many memories. You can't possibly know. But I was already pulling out my phone, scrolling frantically through photos until I found one of Jake and me from last Christmas. I shoved the phone across the table to my mom, whose hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. She stared at the photo for what felt like an eternity, her face cycling through disbelief, horror, and then a grief so profound it made me want to throw up. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my dear God, what have we done?" The next few minutes were a blur of tears, frantic phone calls to my dad, and me trying to process the fact that I'd been in love with, sleeping with, and engaged to marry my twin brother. My actual twin brother, who I'd been separated from at birth and then somehow, impossibly, found again without either of us knowing who we really were to each other. The sick irony wasn't lost on me. Everyone always said we were soulmates, that we were meant to find each other. In a way, they were right. We were meant to find each other. It's just not like this. Never like this. For 3 days after that lunch with my mom, I walked around like a zombie. Called in sick to work, ignored Jake's increasingly worried texts, and basically hid in our apartment, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with this information. Jake kept trying to get me to tell him what was wrong. He'd come home from work and find me sitting on the couch in the same pajamas I'd worn for days, staring at nothing. He'd bring me tea, try to coax me into eating something, ask if I wanted to talk about whatever was bothering me, the care in his voice. The genuine concern in those green eyes that I now knew were identical to my own. It made everything so much worse. "Babe, you're scaring me," he said on Thursday night, sitting down next to me and gently taking my hand. "Did someone die? Are you sick? Just tell me what's going on so I can help." I wanted to tell him. God, I wanted to tell him so badly it physically hurt. But how do you tell the person you love more than anything in the world that you might be siblings? How do you destroy someone's entire reality with one sentence? So instead, I lied. "I'm just stressed about wedding planning. It's overwhelming." He didn't buy it. Jake knew me too well for that, but he didn't push. He just held me while I cried tears I couldn't explain, and the whole time I felt like the worst person in the world. The thing is, despite what my mom had told me, part of me still hoped it wasn't true. I mean, what were the odds? Patricia Morrison was probably a common name. Maybe it was just a crazy coincidence. Maybe my mom had gotten confused or remembered wrong. She was getting older after all. But deep down I knew. The physical similarities, the instant connection. The way we both organized our books by color and put ketchup on eggs and had the same recurring nightmare about drowning. It all made sense. Now in the most horrible way possible. By Friday, I'd made a decision. I needed to know for sure. Not because I doubted my mom's story, but because Jake deserved to know the truth too. And because I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I drove to the nearest CVS and bought 2 DNA test kits, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my credit card steady while paying. The cashier, a teenage girl with bright pink hair, looked at me with concern. "You okay, hun?" she asked. "Just tired," I managed, grabbing the bag and practically running out of the store. That night, Jake was working late on a project, so I had the apartment to myself. I sat at our kitchen table with both test kits spread out in front of me, reading the instructions over and over, even though they were simple enough. Spit in the tube, seal it, and mail it back. Easy. But nothing about this was easy. I kept thinking about our life together. Our first kiss under the oak tree behind the psychology building. The way he proposed with his grandmother's ring that fit my finger perfectly. The house we'd looked at just last weekend with the big backyard, where we planned to let Scout run around, while our future kids played on a swing set. Our future kids. God, our future kids. I grabbed my phone and called my mom, who answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting by the phone for days. "Sarah, how are you holding up?" "I bought DNA tests," I said without preamble. "I need to know for sure." There was a long pause. "Honey, I understand why you'd want confirmation, but what are you going to tell Jake?" That was the question I'd been wrestling with for 3 days. "I don't know. I can't tell him what you told me. Not yet. I can tell him that I've been curious about my birth family and thought it might be fun for both of us. To do one of those ancestry tests together? And when the results come back showing your siblings?" My stomach lurched at the word. Siblings. Not just siblings. Twins. Then I'll figure out how to tell him the truth. Sarah. My mom's voice was thick with guilt and regret. I'm so sorry. Your father and I never imagined this could happen. Patricia moved so far away, and we lost touch completely after the first year, we thought. I know, Mom. I know you didn't do this on purpose. And I did know that, intellectually. But emotionally, I felt betrayed by everyone. By my parents for keeping this secret. By Patricia for never mentioning she'd given up a twin. By the universe for playing this sick cosmic joke on me and Jake. When Jake got home that night around 11, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the test kits hidden in my lap. Hey, he said, dropping his laptop bag and coming over to kiss the top of my head. You look better, less, zombie-ish. Thanks, I think. I took a deep breath. I wanted to ask you something. I've been thinking about doing one of those DNA ancestry tests, to learn more about my background. And I thought maybe we could both do them together, make it a fun thing. Jake raised an eyebrow. Since when are you interested in genealogy? Since I realized I might want to know more about my heritage before we get married and start our own family. The words felt like ash in my mouth, but I kept my voice steady. He considered this, then shrugged. Sure, why not? Could be interesting. Are they accurate? Very, I said, pulling the kits out from under the table. I already bought them. As we sat there spitting into plastic tubes and joking about how gross the whole process was, I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. Here we were, the happy couple, unknowingly taking the test that would prove we shared the same DNA and destroy everything we'd built together. I never imagined what those results would reveal would be even worse than what I already suspected. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at exactly 9:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I screenshotted it, though I'm not sure why. Maybe because some part of me knew this moment would divide my life into before and after forever. I was at work, sitting in my cubicle pretending to review quarterly reports, while actually obsessing over when the results might come back. It had been 3 weeks since we demailed in our samples, the longest 3 weeks of my life. Jake had mostly forgotten about the whole thing, occasionally making jokes about how we might discover we were descended from royalty or serial killers. If only he knew how close to the truth that second one felt. My phone buzzed with the email notification. Your ancestry results are ready. My heart immediately started hammering against my ribs so hard, I thought my coworkers might hear it. I looked around the office, suddenly paranoid that everyone could somehow see the panic written across my face. I grabbed my phone and practically ran to the bathroom, locking myself in the furthest stall from the door. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely tap the email to open it. The Ancestradna logo loaded, followed by that cheerful blue and green design that now looked somehow ominous. Discover your family's story, the page said in friendly white text. What a joke. I clicked on View Your Results and held my breath. The ethnicity breakdown loaded first. 52% Irish, 31% German, 12% Scandinavian, 5% broadly Northwestern European. Standard white American mutt, basically. But that wasn't what I was there for. I scrolled down to the section I was dreading. DNA matches. There it was, right at the top of the list. Jacob Morrison, close family, full sibling, full sibling. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. It was real. It was all real. But then I noticed something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Below Jake's name was another match. Someone I didn't recognize. David Morrison. Close family. Full sibling. David Morrison. Another full sibling. With trembling fingers, I clicked on David's profile. The information was sparse. He demarked his profile as private, but I could see he was 28 years old, born in Michigan. And according to the small profile photo, he looked exactly like Jake and me. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same narrow nose. We weren't twins, we were triplets. I actually threw up right there in the office bathroom stall. The shock, the horror, the complete impossibility of it all hit me like a physical blow. I knelt on that disgusting bathroom floor, retching and sobbing, while my entire understanding of reality crumbled around me. Triplets. We were triplets, and somehow, impossibly, I'd fallen in love with one of my brothers, while there was another one out there somewhere that none of us knew existed. When I finally stopped vomiting and could think semi-clearly again, I called my mom. She answered immediately. She'd been waiting for this call for weeks. "The results came back," I said without preamble, and her voice was barely a whisper. "We're siblings. Jake and I are full siblings." I paused, trying to figure out how to even say the next part. "But Mom, there's someone else. Another match. David Morrison, also a full sibling." The silence on the other end was so complete, I thought the call had dropped. "Mom, are you there?" "That's impossible," she finally whispered. "Patricia said twins." She specifically said twins. "I was there when you were born, Sarah. There were only 2 babies." But even as she said it, I could hear the doubt creeping into her voice, because we both knew that DNA tests didn't lie. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, barely functioning at work, mechanically responding to emails while my brain tried to process this new information. Jake and I weren't just siblings who de-found each other by some sick twist of fate. We were part of a set of triplets that had been split up at birth. And somehow the universe had conspired to bring 2 of us back together in the most inappropriate way possible. When I got home that evening, Jake was already there, cooking dinner and humming some song under his breath. He looked so happy, so normal, so blissfully unaware, that our entire life was built on a lie. I watched him from the doorway for a moment, memorizing this last moment of peace before I destroyed everything. "Hey, babe," he said, looking up from the stove with that brilliant smile that had made me fall in love with him 4 years ago. "How was work?" "Jake," I said, and something in my tone made his smile falter. "We need to talk." The DNA results came back, turned off the burner, and gave me his full attention. Probably expecting me to tell him we were part Irish or descended from Vikings or something equally mundane. "Okay," he said slowly. "What did we find out?" I pulled up the results on my phone, my hands still shaking hours later. "Jake, I need you to sit down. You're scaring me, Sarah. What's wrong? Just ... please, sit down." He sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd taken the DNA tests. 3 weeks. Earlier, the same table where we de-planned our wedding and talked about our future children and laughed about stupid things that couples laugh about. I sat across from him and placed my phone on the table between us, the results still glowing on the screen. "According to this test," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "you and I are full siblings. And there's a third person, David Morrison, who's also our full sibling. We're triplets, Jake. We're triplets who were separated at birth, and somehow we found each other and fell in love without knowing who we really were." The color drained from Jake's face so quickly, I thought he might pass out. He stared at the phone screen, then at me, then back at the screen. "That can't be right," he said finally. "These tests make mistakes. False positives. It has to be wrong." But we both knew it wasn't wrong. We'd both known, somewhere deep down, that our connection was too intense, too immediate, too perfect to be normal romantic love. We'd just never imagined the truth could be this devastating. The first 24 hours after the revelation were complete hell. Jake and I sat at that kitchen table until 3 in the morning, alternating between crying, arguing, and sitting in stunned silence. We kept going in circles. This had to be a mistake, but we looked exactly alike. But DNA tests were 99.9% accurate. But how could we be triplets when everyone said twins, but the tests don't lie? Jake called in sick to work the next day. So did I. We couldn't function. We couldn't even look at each other without feeling sick. Every touch, every kiss, every intimate moment we'd shared over 4 years suddenly felt wrong and twisted and disgusting. "We have to call my mom," Jake said around noon, his voice hoarse from crying. "If we're triplets, she has to know." She had to know. That's when the real anger started. Because if Patricia knew there were 3 babies and only told my parents about 2, that meant she'd deliberately hidden David's existence. And if my parents knew there were 3 babies and only told me about Jake, that meant everyone had been lying to us our entire lives. Jake called Patricia first. I sat next to him on the couch, close enough to hear both sides of the conversation, but not touching because we couldn't bear to touch each other anymore. "Mom," Jake said when she answered, "I need to ask you about when I was born, about my siblings." The silence on the other end was immediate and telling. What siblings, honey? Patricia's voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the panic underneath. Mom, don't lie to me. Sarah and I took DNA tests, and we found out we're related, full siblings. But there's also someone else. David Morrison. We're we triplets. The sound that came through the phone was like a wounded animal. Patricia started sobbing so hard she couldn't speak for almost a full minute. Mom, please, just tell me the truth, she finally whispered. Yes, you were triplets. I'm so sorry, Jake. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me? How could you not tell me? I had 2 siblings out there. Because I was 19 years old and terrified and completely alone. Patricia's voice cracked. Your father had just died. I was working 2 jobs to barely afford rent, and suddenly I was pregnant with 3 babies. 3, Jake, do you have any idea what that would have cost? What kind of life I could have given you? Jake was gripping the phone so hard his knuckles were white. So you just ... gave us away, like puppies? I kept you because you were the strongest. The doctors said you had the best chance if something went wrong. Sarah was the second strongest, so I found her a family. The Hendersons seemed wonderful, and Robert had a steady job. But David ... Patricia's voice broke completely. David was the smallest, born 6 weeks early, and he needed so much medical care. Doctors weren't sure if he'd even survive. There was this couple, the Washingtons, who'd been trying to have children for 15 years. Helen was a pediatric nurse, and they were desperate for a baby, any baby. When I told them about David's condition, they didn't care. They said they'd love him no matter what. Where? Jake's voice was barely audible. Where did they take him? California. Los Angeles. I lost touch with them after the first year. Guys, I was barely holding it together with just you, and staying in contact with the other families felt like torture. I thought it would be easier for everyone if we all just moved on. After Jake hung up, we sat in silence for a long time. Then I called my parents and put them on speaker. My dad answered, and I could tell by his voice that my mom had already told him about the DNA results. Sarah, sweetheart, how are you holding up? Did you know? I asked bluntly. Did you know there were 3 of us? Another telling silence. We knew my mom's voice came through the speaker, thick with guilt. Patricia told us when we agreed to adopt you. She said she was keeping 1 baby, and there was another family taking the 3rd. We ... We wanted to tell you, but Patricia asked us not to. She said it would be too confusing, too painful for all the children involved. So you all just decided to lie to us our entire lives? I was surprised by how angry I sounded. You didn't think we had a right to know we had siblings? Thought we were protecting you, my dad said quietly. All of us, your parents, Patricia, the Washingtons, we thought it would be easier if you each grew up as only children. Never imagined ... that 2 of us would find each other and fall in love. The words tasted bitter. That we'd spend 4 years in a romantic relationship with our own sibling. My parents didn't have an answer for that. Nobody did. Over the next few days, we managed to track down David Morrison in Los Angeles. It took some internet sleuthing and a few awkward phone calls, but we found him working as a graphic designer for a small marketing firm. When Jake finally called him, David's reaction was a mixture of shock and relief. I always knew I was adopted, David told us over video chat that weekend. His face was eerily familiar, like looking at Jake through a funhouse mirror. And I always felt like something was missing, like there was this emptiness I couldn't explain. He'd been raised by loving parents who'd told him about the adoption from an early age, but they'd also believed there were only 2 other children. The Washingtons had died in a car accident 3 years earlier, taking their secrets with them. So none of us knew the truth, David said, shaking his head. We've all been walking around our whole lives missing pieces of ourselves and not even knowing why. The 3 of us talked for hours that day, comparing our lives, our personalities, our weird habits. We all organized books by color. We all put ketchup on eggs. We all had the same recurring nightmare about drowning. It was like looking into 2 different versions of myself. But while finding David felt like discovering a missing part of my soul, it also made the situation with Jake infinitely more complicated. Because now we weren't just dealing with the fact that we were siblings. We were dealing with the fact that our entire family had been torn apart and scattered across the country based on lies and secrets. And Jake and I still had to figure out what the hell we were supposed to do about a relationship that had gone from soulmate love, story to genetic nightmare in the span of a single email. That was 2 years ago. 2 years since my entire world imploded in a CVS bathroom stall and then exploded again at my kitchen table. 2 years since I learned that the greatest love story of my life was actually something else entirely. Jake and I broke up, obviously. How could we not? Even though we loved each other desperately, even though ending our relationship felt like ripping out half my soul, we couldn't stay together. Not romantically. The physical intimacy that had once felt so natural and perfect now felt wrong in a way that made us both physically ill. We tried to stay friends, but it was too hard. Every time we looked at each other, we saw 4 years of a relationship that should never have happened. Jake moved back to Michigan to be closer to Patricia, who fell into a deep depression after everything came out. She kept apologizing, over and over, saying she'd never meant for this to happen. She thought we'd all be better off not knowing. I think the guilt might actually kill her someday. My parents went to therapy, both couples therapy and individual therapy, to deal with their role in keeping the secret. My mom still cries every time she sees me, and my dad has aged about 10 years in the past too. They meant well, but good intentions don't erase the damage. David and I talk regularly now. He's become the brother I never knew I needed, the relationship Jake and I should have had all along if we'd known the truth from the beginning. David moved to Denver last year, which is only a few hours from where I ended up settling, and we see each other every few months. He's funny and kind and creative, and spending time with him feels like coming home in a way that doesn't make me want to throw up. Jake and David have a relationship too, though it's more complicated. There's resentment there that I don't think will ever fully go away. David feels like Jake got to know our birth mother, while he was shipped off to strangers. Jake feels like David got the normal adoption experience, while he was lied to his entire life. They're working through it, but healing takes time. I moved to Colorado about a year ago, started over completely. New job, new apartment, new life. I work for a nonprofit now, helping adoptees reconnect with biological families. It's meaningful work born out of my own experience, and it helps me feel like something good came out of all this trauma. I'm in therapy, obviously. This probably will be for the rest of my life. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that what Jake and I felt wasn't actually romantic love. It was something called genetic sexual attraction, which can happen when close relatives meet for the first time as adults. It's rare, but not unheard of, especially in adoption cases where siblings are separated at birth. Learning there was a name for what we experienced, that we weren't perverts or freaks, that it was actually a documented psychological phenomenon that helped. Didn't erase the shame, but it made it manageable. I don't date. I've tried a few times, but every relationship feels hollow compared to what I had with Jake. Not because it was better, God knows it wasn't, but because that connection, it's that instant recognition, that feeling of finding your missing piece. I don't know if I'll ever experience anything like that again. Maybe that's for the best. Sometimes I wonder about the sliding doors moment of it all. What if Patricia had kept all 3 of us? What if she'd given up all 3 of us? What if Jake and I had never taken that psychology class, never met, never fallen in love with our own brother? But then I think about David, about how lost and incomplete he felt his whole life until he found us. I think about how Jake and I gave each other 4 years of happiness, even if it was built on something impossible. I think about how our story, as fucked up as it is, led me to work I love and helped me understand myself in ways I never would have otherwise. I'm not grateful for what happened, I don't think. I'll ever be grateful for the lies and the secrets and the way our families handled everything. But I'm grateful for who it made me become. Jake sent me a text last month. It's just a simple thinking of you on the anniversary. Because even though we can't be together, even though seeing each other is too painful, he's still the person who knows me best in the world. He's still my twin brother, the other half of my genetic code, the person I shared a womb with for 7 months. I didn't text back, but I thought about him all day. I thought about how we used to laugh until we couldn't breathe, how we could communicate without words, how we both cried during the same parts of movies. I thought about how we'll always be connected in this deep, fundamental way that has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with the fact that we're literally made of the same stuff. That connection we felt, that instant recognition, that sense of coming home, it was real. Just wasn't what we thought it was. I look back now and I can see all the signs we missed. The way people constantly told us we looked like siblings. The way we instinctively understood each other in ways that went beyond normal compatibility. The way we both felt like we'd been waiting our whole lives to find each other. We had been waiting. It's just not as lovers, as family. The adults in our lives robbed us of the chance to know each other as siblings from the beginning. They robbed David of the chance to grow up with us. They robbed all of us of our true identities, and then acted surprised when their lies created chaos. But they couldn't rob us of our connection. That bond, that recognition, that love, it's still there. It just looks different now. Now, I look at old photos of Jake and me, and I don't see a couple who fell in love. I see two lost souls who found each other against impossible odds, who gave each other 4 years of happiness before learning the truth that set us free from a relationship we were never supposed to have. And sometimes on the hardest days, that's enough.